start off, get the ball rolling, could you please welcome Professor David Land, who is a Precision Ag lecturer at the University of New England.
Thank you, and good morning, and thanks for an opportunity to chat. I really take the points raised earlier about education and the challenges we find. When I was a student of physics, I'm a physics graduate of UNE, actually not an ag graduate. When I was a student of physics at UNE, there was a concerted and successful effort by ag and environmental science to shut the physics department down. When I returned to UNE in 2002 as the head of the new physics department, there's been a concerted and successful effort by physics to keep ag and environmental science alive. For the very simple reason is that we don't have a reason to exist without the key paradigms around food fibre production. So we get it. And I think the education sector is slowly waking up to it. I want to chat about some perspectives around this notion of growing ideas for the global marketplace. Precision agriculture, as we heard earlier, has been around for 20 years. I've been in that game for about the same. When we thought we could put a GPS the size of a shoebox into a harvester, we thought we were the cheese and it was the silver bullet for agriculture. But since when did precision agriculture become smart farming? Because really that's what it's all about today. In fact, if you look on the internet, Google searches in smart agriculture or smart farming is growing about 30% faster than Google searches on precision agriculture and climate change. It is today. It is the way we think about ag today. But as we heard earlier today, if you don't get the fundamentals right, smart farming, smart agriculture, tech-enabled agriculture doesn't actually mean something at all. It means nothing at all. So this is the catchphrase of today: smart, smart this, smart everything else. That's the reality of the world we live in. We live in a connected community. Everyone wants to be connected. But at the end of the day, the agronomy hasn't changed when it comes to growing pasture and crops, and animal and livestock management hasn't changed. It's about the technology-assisted tools that come in. And if you look at the history of farming, for 5,000 years, food was the primary commodity generated by farming. And then it became fibre. And then, of course, in the 70s, when we had the global fuel crisis, it became fuel, and biofuels joined the commodity list. Then, of course, in the 90s, with the Kyoto Protocol and so forth, all of a sudden carbon joined the commodity list. And now we've got a fifth one, and that's data and information. And as we heard in the questioning earlier this morning, you know, how do you monetize data and information? Because it is a byproduct of farming. It is something of value that can improve the business and lifestyle of farming, but also that can grow wealth and businesses around it. That is what precision agriculture is today. That is why we call it smart farming. Now, at the University of New England, we actually use the word smart for something. It's about sustainable, manageable and accessible rural technologies. I heard a comment earlier today that, look, if you can't do it without technology, why bother doing it with technology? In other words, isn't the role of technologists to support the fundamentals and to make things easier and more effective in the way we do things? And that's maybe so. But I can also point out that if it wasn't for technology in precision agriculture, there are some dimensions of agronomy and livestock science that we simply wouldn't know today. Sometimes technology and technology-assisted farming throws up whole new paradigms around the way we look at plants and animals and how they interact with landscapes. So the best solution we have when we're doing our technology development and evaluation is you've got to be working cheek by jowl with farmers. Sure, we're very blessed. We have a 2,900 hectare farm in the university. We call it the Smart Farm. It's a highly connected farm. It has optical fibre, fixed wireless, satellite NBN, as well as 4-bar mobile all over it. Now, we would love every farmer to have that. In fact, every farmer should have that, and I'll get to the reasons why shortly. But at the end of the day, it's because we are in the business of educating about the potential future tools and techniques that farmers have knocking on the door. And at the same time, we're trying to look for industry solutions as we go. Industry is a key part of what we do. So I've got a couple of ingredients that I think are worth considering when it comes to our smart farming future, if you want to call it that. For a start, I think we should unlock government data. Now, I use the word government because at the end of the day, it's federal, it's state, it's even local. There are data sets out there that are of enormous potential value to farmers. For example, Geosciences Australia sits upon a massive data cube heritage of remote sensing products. There is now a tool called the NRM Spatial Hub that was developed by the Cooperative Research Centre for Spatial Information, which unlocks that data cube so that you can now look at the farm level at data such as trends in ground cover, for example, which means that you can look at long-term impacts of your own farming practice. This is the sort of data that people think the land management agencies use to check out clearing and big brother and sister watching over our shoulders. There's enormous value in that sort of information. On our own farm, for example, when you use nationally accepted protocols, we've done a full carbon inventory of that farm. We've got 256,000 tonnes of biomass carbon on that farm. We also know we've got about 140,000 tonnes of carbon storage potential if we wargame different management changes, management practice changes on that farm. Now, this is potentially money for us. These sort of tools are available to all farmers. It's just a matter of unlocking the data that's been held by our local, state and federal agencies and making it available. Ultimately, if you have data available from many sources, we heard from Delta this morning about the notion of the connectedness of weather stations, for example. Getting data not only linked to other data sources, but delivering it is key. When satellite imagery first appeared in Australian farming in the late 80s, early 90s, everyone thought it was the silver bullet, and yes, there were a few people that set up condos on wonderful tropical islands as a result of it, but we got nothing out of it. Everyone got burnt. The delivery mechanisms were poor, the spatial resolution was poor, so everyone got burnt. We spent the last 18 years climbing out of that trough of disillusionment, slowly building confidence back into industry. And there are so many satellite image-based products that are available now that are totally different to what they looked like 20 years ago. Pastures from space is an example. That appeared in the late 80s, early 90s. But the uptake has been very, very poor because they were using very coarse resolution satellites and very clunky delivery mechanisms. Now you've got the RDCs and the CRCs and the land management agencies working together to now have slick delivery systems that get imagery back, but also have data linked, for example, not only through Pastures for Space as an example, do you get your feed on offer estimates or your growth rate, but now that's back-ended into livestock stocking rate calculators, so you can wargame directly using the live data or the data that you get presented every week on your farm, stocking rate scenarios. For example here, in the New England where I come from, we've just had a wonderful spate of rain, the ground's sodden. The trick is I want to bring my pasture back to 1,500 kilos per hectare, that magic number that we work from as a minimum pasture biomass level. And I know if I limit my sheep to 192 head on that particular paddock for the next 3 weeks, I'll have my animals grazing, putting on weight, they'll have good nutrition through lambing, but I'll also slowly bring my pasture back up because the growth rate exceeds the consumption rate. Little war games like that. If you're going to have data and delivery mechanisms and sources of data, technology-driven sources, then we've got to have the right regulatory frameworks behind it to support it. Now, the two that come to mind are robotics. We've had robotic tractors parked in coloured sheds for more than 20 years. And how many of you have got a robotic tractor? The technology is here. We do not yet have the social licence to operate the technology. You know, what's an insurance policy worth to a farmer to run a robotic tractor around? Here's an example of a tractor trial that we completed last year, beginning of last year in Gerilda in a rice crop. That's 30 centimetre crawlers running on a 40 centimetre interrow using nothing but satellite guidance. It is an RTK quality GPS, but there is no ground stations at all in sight. The whole thing's being fed by a correction signal live from a satellite. And all of the operations are done remotely. Yet, if you look at the video clip on the right, you'll see people running up and down the road there. They're the safety people, and the people with the kill switches are ready to go. So social licence and regulatory frameworks to operate. That's one of the biggest constraints. And the drones, of course, are another one. Wouldn't be a tech talk if we weren't talking about drones. Thankfully, after now, 1st of October, we can all have a sub 2 kilo drone on our farm for the business of farming, without any form of certification required, though you do have to abide by the flying rules. And with these off-the-shelf drones, you can do some slick things, using just apps to drive them and the cloud to process them, assuming that you've got the connectivity, of course. For example, this is a 12-minute or 10.5-minute exercise on a bit of country up in the New England, just flying backwards and forwards, taking oblique imagery, and doing carbon storage estimates of trees, which is a desktop exercise on the farm. Even weight and wool clip estimates on sheep through 3D imaging, pasture biomass estimates through three-dimensional imaging. This is all available on off-the-shelf devices now. So how long did it take us to get some clarity around the regulations for operating drones now? And buy one for your kids or use one for yourself and have fun with it and learn, because you will create ideas around using that particular innovative piece of kit that none of us academics have thought about. It's about harnessing the power within. Whenever we get involved in industry-funded R&D in my group, now we're exclusively industry-funded. We've got about $10 million of R&D on the books, and I'm only saying that because we have a recipe that seems to be generating faith within the industry funding body. You get the farmers in from day one. You don't go away and come up with a clever idea and then face a brick wall of how am I going to push this out there into the user space. You get them in from day one. Brad Wooldridge, who will be following our presentations a little later on, is a classic example, because it's the truth testing that starts right from day one, the pub tests right from day one, that keeps your feet on the ground when it comes to doing R&D. And it's about education. If we're going to educate future farmers, then we need to be exposing them to what they're facing in the marketplace today. Sure, soil physics, plant agronomy, livestock science, some of those main areas haven't changed a huge amount, but it's got to be done within the context of what's out there in the marketplace. They need to be blooded on the data and the thinking that's out there, and the business thinking as well as the technology thinking. And in a way, that's a very important ingredient that needs to be re-injected back into teaching in all forms from all ages when it comes to agriculture, environmental science, and even science, technology, engineering and maths. I believe I run the only physics course in the country that the students at third year suddenly wake up and realise they're doing an ag subject. All right? I don't tell them in advance, they just happen to look around and go, oh, what's this about? You've got to sneak it in, it's got to be the context from day one. And the fact is that the tools that are being developed for farmers today need to capture that wealth of knowledge that is in on a farmer's neck and around the farmer's waist. The gut server and the neck-top computer. My father used to say artificial intelligence is no substitute for natural stupidity. And he's dead right, because life experience and understanding what's underfoot has to be a key component in putting the technology to work for farmers. That's the order. So, for example, devices that use smartphones to help calculate things for you is one thing. But in this particular example that I've got on the board, this is a device that allows you to estimate pasture biomass from a little handheld optical sensor. When the farmers use it, and in particular if a farmer decides, I'm going to create my own calibration, and the phone talks them through it, we crowdsource that into a server and make that calibration available to any other farmer in the region who's growing similar species in that particular time of year. So getting the data from the farm back to the scientists is a key part of R&D in my personal view. It's about being connected. In the review of telecommunications for rural and regional Australia, I was delighted to read that 99% of Australians have access to reliable mobile phone. Did you realise that? But of course that 1% left over, guess where they are? Because only 30% of the country's covered. Now I believe government policymakers get it. Mobile black spot program is a key part, has to be a key part of moving forward, but it's got to be more than just connecting up transportation corridors. It's about connecting the landscapes that we work in as well. But there are some novel solutions appearing in the marketplace about connecting up our landscapes to the outside world. We want to scatter things around the farm. So you've got, for example, Myriota is an example of an innovation whereby you could potentially connect the sensors on ground in your farm direct to satellites. No need for terrestrial communications. You've now got LoRa, the long-range, low-power, wide-area network stuff. The community mesh networks are appearing now, whereby you can have long-range transmission of small data packets from your farm back to a single gateway that could be shared by multiple growers. One mobile SIM card. And all of a sudden, all your soil moisture probe is coming off farm. So it's very exciting. We've learned that when you light up your landscape, things start appearing. I've got people now using trees on our farm as soil moisture probes. We've now got our first beehives rolled out that allow beekeepers to actually watch their hives live remotely. How heavy is it? What's the temperature and humidity inside? Are there precursors to swarm behaviour? Is it going to rain? Interesting paper published in Europe not long ago using bees to predict rain. The Internet of Things is a key part of our farming future, and we heard again earlier this morning. For example, Delta is an example of building a business model around distributed sensors and sensor networks. That's part of it. You have to remember that the whole reason we all got into remote sensing back in the 80s and 90s was because we did not have the technology or the price points to allow us to scatter stuff around the landscape. So we stood up above it in space and we looked down. Yet when you look at the heritage and the way we're moving forward in precision ag, it seems to be about satellites, now to aircraft, now to drones. We can actually go back to the beginning and think about the Internet of Things, because that's what we have on offer. Living and breathing soil moisture networks. With that data coming in, you can grow your plants on the place and understand exactly what's going on. And it's about animals too. There is an emergence of nascent technology around tracking all our animals on farms. We've certainly got some that we're evaluating on our farm. If you understand where they are, what they're doing, there's a whole plethora of decisions that can be supported with that sort of technology. And I'll put this up to show you an example of what the spin-offs are. If you can track your animals around your farm and you can weigh them through, for example, walkover weighing, then there you have a yield map. That's a sheep weight gain yield map for that particular paddock. That's exactly what switched the grains industry on in the mid-90s when we put GPSs on harvesters. You provide that to our livestock producers and all of a sudden precision agriculture is going to kick off in the livestock sector. So if, that's what we're looking at. Come on tech developers, come on business world, give us the solutions, give us reliable walkover weigh, and it is coming. It is here in some forms that we can actually get sensible weights out of and give us reliable, low-cost tracking. Virtual fencing will follow. The federal government has just invested some $4 million into a Mark II virtual herding project. So that is coming along. There's an example. Sheep in the paddock, virtual fence goes up, sheep not, virtual fence goes off, sheep go back. This stuff will now kick on again. Safety workflow. 200 people killed on quad bikes in the last 8 years, primarily rollover and crush injuries. Connecting quad bikes. Speed alerts. Too many Gs on a corner alerts. Why not? This is about safety and workflow. That's where the real big savings can be made from technology in farming as we speak. The trick is about helping us to be smarter, and this is the thing. Everything that we're looking at now is going to generate more information or capture the information that is being generated underfoot. And at the end of the day, this notion of precision agriculture, decision agriculture is critical. And it's so easy to say quick and leave the room, job done. But my advice is big data is about lots of little data. And if you want to get into the technology-assisted space, create a little bit of a data, learn to understand it before you start creating big data. And if you've got that, then the big things will follow. What are the telecommunications options you need to support it? What are the decision tools you need to support it? And of course, who owns the data? And the rest follows. And I guess at the end of the day, is that our farming future is a connected farming future. I was privileged to borrow for a day a Sky Musty Ute. You don't put Mickey Thompson tyres on a Ford Ranger and not take it off the road. It's simply not allowed. Took it off road, put it on the farm, and believe me, every farmer should have one of those. You know, 138 meg Wi-Fi hotspot around that vehicle wherever you park it. So come on NBNCo, give us a low cost. Every farmer has one version. Thank you.
He's way too practical to be a physicist. There's something odd there. I don't know what that is. That was really interesting. It makes me wonder about dairy when you milk cows twice a day and they don't measure where that feed came from and where that performance came from and how it varies day to day and pasture to pasture and feed to feed. It's interesting that you're doing that work in sheep when you think it would be far more applicable to dairy.